honesty is not always available when we first need it. Sometimes the circumstances of a life, the expectations, the pressures, the specific costs of telling the truth in a particular time and place make honesty simply not viable. And we learn, in those circumstances, to manage, to present the acceptable version, to live at a slight distance from the full truth of who we are. And we carry that distance, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, waiting for a time when the truth might be more safely told, or accepting that the time may never come. Rock Hudson was one of the most famous men in America for most of the 1950s and 1960s. He was tall and handsome in a way that the era particularly valued, a kind of wholesome, uncomplicated physical appeal that made him ideal for the romantic comedies he made with Doris Day and for the dramatic roles that demonstrated he could do more than look the part. Audiences trusted him. They liked him. There was a quality of warmth in his screen presence that came through even in the most conventionally constructed roles. And they knew nothing at all, about the fundamental reality of his private life. Rock Hudson was gay, in an era when that truth, made public, would have ended his career immediately and permanently. And so he managed. Across decades of the most scrutinized kind of public life, he managed. The management required, by any honest accounting, an enormous amount of ongoing effort. Not just the public appearances, not just the studio-arranged dates and the carefully maintained public persona, but the interior management, the daily, decades-long work of living at a fundamental distance from your own truth, of knowing who you were and presenting someone else, of having genuine relationships in private and maintaining a different narrative in public. He was good at it. He had to be. The cost of failure, in the specific time and place where his career existed, was, in his estimation, and in the reasonable estimation of everyone around him, total. In 1985, Rock Hudson publicly disclosed that he had AIDS. He was one of the first major public figures to do so, and the disclosure, made in July of that year, only months before he died, changed the landscape of how AIDS was understood and discussed in America. Before the disclosure, the disease had existed for many Americans as something abstract, something that happened to others in communities they did not know. After Rock Hudson, it had a face, a name they recognized, someone they had watched on television on Saturday afternoons for 30 years. The effect on public awareness was immediate and significant. The stigma did not disappear overnight, but something shifted. The distance between the disease and the ordinary American life contracted in ways that had not been possible before. Hudson died in October 1985, at 59 years old. He had known for over a year that he was ill, and in the months between the diagnosis and the public disclosure, he had time to consider what he wanted to do with what remained. What, in the time available, mattered most. He used what he had. The fame that had required for decades the suppression of the truth, he used it, finally, in service of the truth. The disclosure he made, and the permission it granted to a public conversation that needed to happen, was itself a kind of late honesty. Not the honesty that would have been most meaningful 30 years earlier, the honesty of a life lived without the management. but the honesty that was available now, given fully, without reservation. Late honesty is still honesty. It does not undo the years of the other thing, but it does something real in the person who gives it, and in the world that receives it. Rock Hudson's disclosure changed things that needed to change. The conversation it opened, the awareness it created, the human cost of the epidemic that became visible because of the face he put to it. These were real and significant contributions, made at the end of a life, with what remained. And they mattered. Maybe you have something like that. A honesty you have been holding for reasons that were real, that made sense when you made the decision to hold them. A truth about who you are, or what you want, or what you believe, that has not been fully available in the version of yourself that most people know. Not because the suppression was dishonest, because the circumstances made the full truth more costly than you were able to bear. And you managed, in the way that people manage when the alternatives seem worse. Maybe the time is different now. Maybe the circumstances that made the management necessary have changed enough that a different kind of presence is possible. Not necessarily a full and public disclosure. That is not always what is required, and not always what is wise. But a greater degree of authenticity, a smaller gap between the version you present and the version that is actually you. A few more people who know the truth, and a slightly more honest relationship with what you carry. That movement toward honesty, however partial, however incremental, is a second chance, and it is available as long as there is time to take it. Rock Hudson had a limited time. He used it for what mattered, not for tying up all the loose ends, not for resolving everything that had been left unresolved in a long life of managing, for the one thing that was most available and most needed, for the honesty that could make a difference. That was his second chance, and he took it, fully, without reservation, knowing what it cost and what it offered. What is yours? What is the honesty that has been waiting, not necessarily for decades, not necessarily with anything like the magnitude of what Rock Hudson carried, but waiting, the truth about something in your life that has not yet been fully told? The relationship where something important has not been said. The part of yourself that has been managed rather than expressed. The thing you know and have known, perhaps for a long time, that is still sitting in the space between what is true and what you have presented. That is where the second chance lives. In the movement toward that truth, in whatever form it can take, with whatever people are ready to receive it, at whatever pace the circumstances allow. He died knowing that what he had done with his final months had mattered, that the honesty he had finally extended, at cost and in full awareness of what it was costing, had done something real in the world, that the conversation it had opened would continue, that the faces it had put to the crisis would make the response to that crisis different than it would otherwise have been. He did not know the full extent of the effect. No one does in the moment. But he knew it was real, and he was at peace with it. The peace that comes from having used what you had, honestly, for what mattered, is not a small thing. It is, in the end, one of the most sustaining things a person can carry into the final chapters. You still have time. Whatever the thing is that has been waiting, whatever truth or honesty or step toward greater authenticity has been holding in the background, there is still time for it. Not infinite time, but enough time to begin, enough time to make the movement, even partial, even incremental, toward the version of yourself that is more fully true. That is the second chance. Not a dramatic reinvention, just a movement, quiet, genuine, in the direction of honesty that makes the remaining time different from what came before. More real, more fully you, more at peace with itself. So take a slow breath and let yourself name, quietly, the honesty that has been waiting, the truth that has not yet been given its full space, the version of yourself that has been held back. And consider, what would it look like to give it a little more room? Not all at once. Not in a way that costs more than the benefit justifies, but in some small, genuine, directed movement toward the thing that is actually true. Hudson made that movement with what he had, in the form it could take, in the time available, with the resources at his disposal. And it mattered, as yours will, as it always does when honesty is finally given the space it has been waiting for. It matters. Every time. Without exception. And the people who receive your honesty, whenever and however it arrives, will carry something from it that they would not have otherwise carried. They will be changed in specific ways by the truth you chose to give. Not always dramatically, not always in ways you can see, but changed, because truth received is always different from the managed version. It lands differently. It reaches further. It changes what is possible between two people, or in a public conversation, or in the interior life of someone who needed to hear it. Hudson's truth reached millions of people who needed to hear it. Your truth will reach the specific people in your specific life who need it from you. And it will be enough. It will always be enough. The honesty is never wasted.